Hello friends, welcome back to Java at Interview Questions, and in this video we'll talk about predicate. I believe that you guys know what is predicate by now because we have already covered what is a predicate. So predicate is a inbuilt functional interface provided by Java 8. Alright, now in this video we'll talk about test function, which is an abstract function. So I hope you know, right, what is function interface. So functional interface is an interface having only one abstract method. So predicate is built-in or inbuilt functional interface, and the abstract function is test, right? Here we'll talk about AND function, we'll talk about OR, and we'll talk about negate function. I'll give you a demo and I will explain how it works. Now, what is AND, OR, and negate? So all these three functions are default methods available in predicate interface. So I believe you guys know that a predicate can have only one abstract function, but apart from having one abstract function, it can have n number of default functions, right? So these three are default methods available in predicate, correct? And in the end, we'll talk about predicate zoning. All right. So that being said, let's begin the video. So predicate, as I told you earlier, predicate is a Boolean valued function. So what does it mean? Anytime you just need to check for a condition and you are expecting either true or false, then you can use predicate. So predicate is a all right. Now let me give you an example. So here you can see we have a predicate and p equals to, I'm passing one string type argument to this one, and what I'm doing is I'm checking for a condition. My string should not be null and the length should be greater than 0. If whatever parameter I'll pass, if that matches this particular condition, I will get true as a result, or I'll get false, right? So let me give you an example here. All right, so just to save the time, I already have one example here. What do I have here is one predicate and the type is a string. The parameter which I'm passing is string argument because I'm dealing with the string here at the moment. But you can pass integer value if you're working with the integer or any other, right? So here I'm passing a string so that you can see S is my string, and so I have already explained what is this. This particular thing is known as lambda expression. So what is lambda expression? Lambda expression provides reference. So by using lambda expression, you can provide implementation to the method of a functional interface. So predicate is functional interface, and here is your abstract function. So you need to provide the implementation of this particular function test, right? So this is my implementation here. So I hope you guys still remember. S is my input parameters. So here is S is my input arguments. Then arrow indicator which says that I'm going to write the lambda expression, and this is my method body, right? So what is the implementation? What I'm doing here is I'm checking for that particular string is not null and length is greater than 0. So this is the implementation of test function. Okay, now if I run this one, what I will get? So here I'm passing null. So I'm expecting, let me just comment out whatever I have here just for simplicity. Now if I run this one, I hope you guys can guess, right? Because I'm passing null, so it will return false. Here you see. So predicate always comes back with the either true or false value. Always, you need to make sure. Remember this one, that predicate, it always returns true or false. So predicate is also known as Boolean valued function. So whenever you need to check any condition and you are expecting true or false as a result, you can use predicate. Right now, if you see here, I have passed okayjava, which is not null, and the length is also greater than 0. So the result is true, correct? That's pretty cool. Let's move forward. Here, what I'm going to do is now next, here I have another predicate, and what I'm doing this time is predicate p. I'm passing a string. What I'm doing here is I'm checking whether this predicate, the input value string, starts with O or not, like whether this starts with O, right? Or what I can do is I can do like this. O, or operator, or capital O, correct? So this is my implementation, right? Now what I'm doing here is I need to check whether this particular string starts with O or not. I hope you guys can guess the result. The output starts with small o, right? So the condition is true. You see result is true here, right? So predicate, now if I go and change this value to like say X, run. So here is false, correct? Let me just revert it. Similarly, I have another predicate here, and what I'm doing here is in this particular thing, I'm checking whether the particular string is ends with a or not. So what I'm passing is okayjava, right? Sorry, let me just make it here. Okayjava. Now you know that this particular string is ending with a, so obviously I'll get true, right? So let me run. Correct. So here is true, right? Now the benefit of using predicate is that you don't have to create your own interface here. Like if I have to replace, right, then I need, for example, I need to if I don't have to use the predicate, right, what I can do is, what is the other way of doing it? I can create an interface like this interface, and then I can name it, like for example, null value, some interface, right? Interface, and here I can write one function, boolean check null, and I'll pass a string here. So this is my functional interface, right? So one way of doing it, if I don't have to use predicate, I need to write my own interface and I need to provide the implementation of this particular function, right? So for example, you see here I'm using 3 predicates, right? So I need to write 3 functional interface like this. Let me just give me a minute. Actually, I will make it very quick. I know that I take too much time. So for example, I have interface called starts with. Can you just write here starts with is my function, and here say I have another interface called ends with. Can I check here ends with, right? So what I'm doing is, like, to implement to fulfill my requirement, I need to create multiple function interfaces. One is just to check the value, second one is to check for the whether the particular string starts with particular value or not, or just to check whether the particular string starts with a or not, right? Now I need to write the implementation of each function the way I did here, right? Now the good part of using predicate is that you don't have to create your own functional interfaces. Let me comment this one. Because Java provides you already a built-in interface, you can simply use that. Correct. So here I hope you guys understood what is the predicate and how can we use it, right? Let's go. Now what is the next? What is predicate joining? So predicate joining, okay, let me give an example. For example, here I have to check whether my particular string starts with O and ends with A, right? So now I want to check two predicates. I want to check two conditions. One is starts with. I want to make sure that my string starts with O, and I also want to make sure that my string ends with A. So now I have to run two predicates together, right? So that can be done by using predicate joining. And how can you do that? So predicate provides a function called AND. So AND is one way of joining the predicates, right? Let me give you take to this particular function. So here this is your functional interface called predicate, right? Here is your abstract function, and if you go down here you can see your AND function, which is a default. I hope you guys know what is a default, right? I have already explained in the last videos. So default AND is a default function available in the predicate, and if you see the input, it takes another predicate as input, right? So here I'm passing one predicate. What I'm doing here is, here's my one predicate 1, which will check whether my string is null or not. Then I'm checking, please go and check whether my string starts with O. And then what I'm doing here is, I also want to make sure that my string ends with A, right? So if you see this particular string, this particular input will fulfill all the conditions. Yeah, obviously it is not null. It starts with O and it also ends with A, right? Now let me run this one. So here you can see the result. It's true. Correct. Now in case, so what this particular AND operator does is, like, for example, if I pass null, let me just go back here. So if you see here, I have predicate 1 and predicate 2 dot test is my function, and I'm passing some value. Now the one thing which you need to remember or memorize is that AND operator, right? What it does, if the first predicate is false, because first how AND works is, like, if both are true, then only you will get true. This is what AND operator says, right? If one of them is false, then the result is false. So in case your first predicate, the result of your first predicate is false, it will not check the second predicate. Let me give an example here. So here my first predicate is null. Correct. Now if I pass here, let me just take this out. null. So my first predicate is null and then other predicate and then next one, right? But now because I'm using AND operator, right? So if first one returns false, then I know my result will be false. So this particular the next predicates will not be executed, right? Let me run this one. So I'm passing null. My first check, my first predicates just fail, right? So the result is false. I hope you are getting it, right? So your AND is, what is AND? AND is a default function available in predicate, which is a function interface, right? And it works like a logical AND operator. So this is one way of joining the predicate. So you can join multiple predicates. So basically you can apply multiple checks, multiple conditions on single input. All right. Now what is next? Next is logical OR. So AND is one way. Another way of joining predicate is OR operator. So predicates provides another default function known as OR. P1 dot OR P2 dot test, and then you pass your argument. So I am applying these two predicates or conditions on my this particular input value. Now what is the condition? Concept here is, if first predicate is true, then the other predicate is not evaluated. So if when the return of first predicate is true, it will not go and run the second predicate because it's OR operator, right? If one of them is true, the result is going to be true, correct? Let me give an example here. So if you see here, okay, let me take this out. What I'm doing here is I want to make sure that my predicate it starts with or ends with something. So one of them should be true, right? If I put O, what it says, it will go and first check whether this particular string, input string, starts with O or not. Yeah, right? Because it okay starts with O, so the result is going to be true, right? Because it's now if I put something here, like for example A, now what will happen? Let me run. The result is false. Why? Because P dot starts, right? It's false. It does not start with O. Now it will run the second condition which says check whether the particular string ends with A, which is not happening here, right? So the result is false. Now if I write something like this, Java, I hope you guys can guess the result, right? So your first predicate will return false, right? Because the string does not start with O, but your second predicate ends with will return true. Why? Because the string ends with A, correct? So the final result is going to be true. And that is what you see here, right? So by using AND and OR operator, OR function, you can join, you can apply multiple predicates, multiple conditions on single argument. Now let me show you this one. So AND is, OR is similar to the AND. OR is also a default function, correct? And it takes predicate as input. This is that is what you see here, right? I have passed a predicate. What is P ends with is a predicate, correct? Now, so I believe you have understood, right? How can you write multiple predicates? How can you join multiple predicates? You know about AND operator, like AND function. You also know about the OR, which is again a default function in the functional interface, right? Now there is one more called negate. So what it does, for example, what I want to make sure that, can you please return true? Let me show you something here, right? Sys out starts with, how your starts with works like this, test, and I want to pass okay, sorry, okay, ay, okay. Now can you guess the result here? Because your predicates, your input, sorry, ends with, right? Let me write here Java, ends with A, so you can expect a true here, right? Let me run this one. So the last result of this particular thing is true. Why? Because I'm checking a true condition, but my condition is that, can you please check whether that particular string ends with, I want reverse the result of, I just want to make sure that my string does not end with A. So what you can do is either you go and change your implementation, right? You go and create another predicate just to make sure that your string does not start with A, or what you can do is this predicate interface, right? Predicate function interface provides one more function, one more default function known as negate. It takes nothing, there is no input, right? What it does, it will give you the result of the revert, the opposite of the result. So now if I use P ends with test, I know that I will get true because my string is ending with A, but I want the reverse, like opposite of true, which is false. I want to make sure. So if I use P dot ends with, so what will happen? This particular check will be applied to the input string, but the result is going to be negate, opposite of that one, right? Let me run this one. So here you go, false, right? Let me just put all these two together. So what I'm going to do here is I'm running predicate, like predicate on this particular value, but this time I have used and as well. Let's see the result. So first says true. Why? Because your string ends with A, but the next statement returns false. By why? Because you are doing negate. So negate is like negative, opposite. Let's make it false. Correct? So I have already explained in functional interface we have got three default function, right? Which one? First one is AND, which you see here. Then we have OR, right? And then we have negate. Correct? So there are three default functions available in predicate. And the only abstract method which you have is test, which I already explained. So this is all about predicate and the different functions available. We have already discussed about the predicate zoning. Now what I want to do is I want to give you a practical example, like the one which you can have in your project, because these examples are very simple, very straightforward, right? Just for the understanding, but you will not have this kind of checks and conditions in your project. So I'm going to give you an example. What I'm doing here is I have list of employees and each employee is having these many parameters. ID. So each employee has an ID, age, gender, first name and last name, right? And what do I have? I have getter setters and then two string, right? So I have got list of employees and now I want to use predicates here. So my first task, I want to find out a young employees of the team, right? So for example, I want to find out a young employee. So how can I write a predicate for that? So can you get me? Can you print young employee, young employee? When I'm saying young employee, in the sense the age should be greater than 21 and less than 35. So this is what the check is. Okay. So how can I do that? Because I'm checking a Boolean condition, so I can write a predicate here. And here, as I told you earlier, right, predicate takes one argument, right? The type that you want to pass. In our earlier example, we have passed a string, but this time I will be working on employee object. So here you can pass your custom objects as well, right? Predicate. Now we need to import java.detail.function is the package where you can have all your inbuilt functional interfaces, right? Now what I'm doing is I'm checking for young employee. Is young employee or not, right? So now what is the input argument? Input argument is an employee object. And what is the condition to find out whether the employee is young or not? We need to get the age. The age should be greater than 21 and age should be less than 35. So any employee satisfying this particular condition is a young employee. Now I want to print the list of all the young employees. Can you please print the name of all the young employees, right? So what I'm going to do is I will write a for, like enhanced for loop I'm going to use. So employee E, and here I will pass my list, right? That you can see here that I have got all employees here in my list. You can remove. So what I'm going to do is, okay, all right. Now I want to print the employees is young or not. So you guys know that this predicate will return either true or false. So I'm not going to create another variable to hold the return the results. Know what is the function. So the function is test and I have to pass my employee, right? I'm passing each employee from my employees list and I'm applying this particular condition, which is my predicate is pointing to. I want to check, make sure that the employee is satisfying, the employee is satisfying this particular condition. If it is true, then print all those employees. So let me run this particular code. You see, I have got employee ID 1, name is Ricky, age is 23, Rosie, age is 22, Jaden, age is 33, and then David is 25, right? So this way you can write one predicate. Now this can be replaced with the stream. If you are working with the stream, right, you can use stream to convert your list into a stream, and then you can apply a filter as well. But that is a different story that we'll talk about later when we'll discuss the stream API. But now let's focus on this, on the predicate itself, right? So this is how you can write a predicate to print and to find out young employees, right? So print young employees of the company. Similarly, your requirement is that, for example, now you want to print a female employee, right? Can you please find out all the female employees of the company? So again, I am writing is female is my predicate name. You can, this is just a variable reference. You can write whatever you want. Again, I'm passing E is the object. I'm passing an employee object, but this time I want to make sure gender is dot equals ignore case. Let me just write F here. I want to make sure that my employee is female. I want to print all the female employees of the company here. So what I'm going to do is I'll use if, and then again I'll use my predicate is female dot test, and I will pass my employee, and I'll simply print E, right? Happy? So I'm going to comment this particular portion because I don't need, just to give you a clear output. I'll just comment this part. Now what I'm doing is I'm passing my employee object, and I'm checking whether the employee is a female or not. If it is female, then please print the employee details. So this is what you see. Rosie, age is 22. That you can see if I go here, right? So my first female employee, F, right? Here is enters F, is Rosie. Second is Christine. Then we have Scarlett. Then we have Rakul, right? So this is how you can write your predicate, and that will give you all the female employee of the company. Right now, in case, so this is your generic. Now there is a requirement. Can you please find out all the employees of having certain more than say 40 years? Can you please print me all the employees of having as more than 40 years old employees, right? So I have two employees, correct? 41 and 45. So let me write a predicate here. So what I'm going to is, first of all, I need to create a variable, right? So I will simply create a variable called more than. So I will simply call it as, you can give it a better name, but I will simply call it more than 40, and I'll use a predicate, and I will pass again an employee object, right? So is more than is my predicate equals to, what I will do again, same thing, right? I'm passing one employee object, and I have to check E dot get as, what is the problem here? This is typing mistake, right? So E dot get, can you give me the S please? And I want to print all the employees having S more than, comment this part as well. Okay. So now what I will do, I will use if operator again, if, and I will use my predicate is more than dot again test. I hope you guys have understood now what will happen. And I will print the employees, right? So this guy will print all the employees having as more than 41-year-olds, right? Looks cool, right? So this is one way of doing it. Now we'll talk about the predicate chaining. So can you please print all the female employees, or you can see like young female employees basically, right? Young female employees. So how can you do that? Let me just comment this portion as well. I want to print if, first of all, I have to check whether the particular employee is young or not. Young dot, I have already explained that we have AND operator that you can use to join multiple predicates, and I want to apply the second just to find out whether that employee is female or not, and then I will use the test function, then my input sys out, right? Now you can guess the result. So this particular check will bring all the female employees having as this particular greater than 21-year-old and less than 35-year-old. Correct? So negate we have already seen, right? So this will give you the opposite, the result of the opposite of the outcome. Now what is the BiPredicate? So far we have seen that we are passing, for example, here you see I need to fetch an employee of more than 40 years old, right? So if you see I'm using a constant here. But what if I have to pass my input variables? Say, for example, sometimes I just want to fetch the employee of greater than 20 years old, say greater than 30 years old, or some other condition, right? So predicate is another function, but sorry, so BiPredicate is another interface, function interface, but BiPredicate takes two argument as input. BiPredicate takes two argument as input. So here is like BiPredicate. It takes two argument. So one is I'm passing my employee here, and another value I will pass an integer value, like integer say in the sense like age I will pass, right? So what I'm going to do is this time I will pass an object and I will pass as input, and I want to make sure that e dot employee dot get as, sorry, yeah, by predicate, let me just first employee dot get as is, can you please print me the employee of greater than this particular as, right? Let me import by predicate. So if you see by predicate also, they're only in the same package. So the concept here is predicate takes only one argument, by predicate takes two arguments. So again, you need to specify what are the two types. It could be anything, but for our example, I'm using employee, and the second type is integer value. Now I want to use what I want to do that. What is my check says that I will pass an employee object, I will pass the date, and I want to make sure that, for example, let me just comment this one as well here. If I'm using by predicate, right, and then test condition, here I will pass an employee. Can you please print all the employees of having as having greater than 20 years? Very simple thing, right? So here I'm passing the input. Now I can change the value. Let me just run this one and let's see the result. Correct, all the employees having greater than. Now for example, so here I don't have to change the value. For example, if you remember here, right, here we have hard-coded, we have already passed the value. So this particular value, the condition was fixed, but this time if you use by predicate, you can pass the value as well. For example, can you please print me all the employees of greater than say 35 years old? Cool, right? Okay, let me just comment this particular thing here. Correct. So this is how you see, right? This is nice. Now quickly let me give you one more example here. Let me just show you. There was a one check to find out as more than, right? I will run this one just to give you copy, and I will run this one. So what is this particular predicate is doing is that it will just go and populate all the employees having greater than 40 years old. Now for example, if I have to find out the employees less than 40 years old, right, what I can do is I can simply use negate. Now let me run this one. So negate will give you the opposite, the reverse of them, right? So by using negate, I can print all the employees of having as less than 40 years. That is what you see here. All right. So here we are done. We have discussed all the functions or provided by the function interface. We have seen by predicate as well. If you guys have any doubt, just let me know in the comment section. Bye for now.